the Ikwerre people and their involvement and participation in the Nigerian Biafra civil war, is another topic that I want to, bring to fore. I want to treat, the involvement of Ikwerre people, the participation of Ikwerre people in that conflict, in that feud between Nigeria and Biafra. So many people, as I hear them say and write, say that Ikwerre people, did not support Biafra during that conflict. That Ikwerre people, did not take part in the war between Nigeria and Biafra. Some others say that Ikwerre people sabotaged the efforts of Biafra, and betrayed, the eastern region during that hostility between the federal government of Nigeria and eastern government of Nigeria at the time. The Nigerian Biafran civil war took place in the year 1967, and the war is associated, or the causes of the war, are associated with so many reasons. So many reasons are responsible for the takeoff of the Nigeria Biafra civil war. So many reasons. Some of the reasons, as history has made us to know, are associated with the coup of 1966, the first military coup that took place in Nigeria, as led by Majors Kaduna Chukwumanzogu and Ifajuna. I think there were some of the prominent ringleaders in that coup. The masterminds, the major masterminds in that coup of 1966. One leg of the argument or discussion is that there was crisis in Western region in 1959, I think, thereabout, prior to independence, crisis associated with election, and two prominent Yoruba people clashed in Western region at the time. The premier, the late Chief Akintola, and the leader of Yoruba politics at the time, called the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. So the crisis of that time, the Western region, had a hangover, and also appeared in the early, periods of the 1960s, immediately after independence. There were massive, corruptions. Corruption was very, very heavy. Nepotism was there, and so many other reasons. Ethnic, religious and political tensions were also there. So some young Nigerian military officers, like Major Kaduna Nzogu, Ifajuna, Ademola Ademoyega, Kafo, so many others, so many of them, staged a coup to oust the first civilian government of this country, as headed by the late Sir Tafawa Balewa, who was then the prime minister, and Dr. Nnamdi Ikwerre, as governor general, subsequently the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So these young officers leveled so many accusations on the politicians of that era and decided, to carry out a military coup d'etat, a military push, a military coup to oust and overthrow the legitimate government of Tafawa Balewa and Dr. Nnamdi Ikwerre. So crisis continued to brew up as a result of that coup. Historians have, in various angles, condemned the kind of execution of that coup. Many people have condemned it, the way it was staged and mismanaged by those young officers of the Nigerian army, who undertook that military coup. In the end, the coup was tagged an Igbo coup, because most of the ringleaders in that coup were prominently from the Igbo extraction, from the Igbo ethnic group, Igbo speaking people. That was how it was classified. The meaning was that Igbo people, their politicians and those in the military, wanted to eliminate, diminish the influence of the Hausas and Yorubas, in the military and in politics, and take over. That was the interpretation associated with that unfortunate incident, the coup of 1966. It was tagged an Igbo coup. So the inability of the then military head of state that replaced Tafawa Balewa in the person of General Agiu Thomas Umunakwe Ironsi, to appropriately and wisely manage the crisis that brewed up as a result of that coup, led some northern military officers, Hassan Katsina and some of them, to retaliate the killings of some of their political stalwarts, some of their political leaders, like the Prime Minister himself, Sir Tafawa Balewa, the Premier of Northern Region, the late Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardwana of Sokoto, and some other prominent northern elements, at the time. Those northern officers decided to avenge or retaliate, the killing of those northern people. That revelation also brought about the death of General Agiu Ironsi. So the coup was staged and was mismanaged. Though reasons were given by those young officers as to why they carried out that coup, but it was not enough, and the military head of state was not also strong enough, was not that composed to manage the situation, and it lingered And from that there became pogrom, the killings of southeastern people, the easterners in the north. And there also became a mutiny in the army, where those northern elements descended on soldiers from this, region, from the eastern region of Nigeria. That was in retaliation to the killings of their own people. So there were mediations, from both international and indigenous people. So many prominent people, Soyinka, and some of them, and far away, even as far away as in Ghana, Sankara and others, mediated into the matter to see how they can bring truce between the warring conflicts. But that was never fructified, and the quarrel continued until there was a threat by the then military head governor of the different eastern region called Colonel Odumegwu Chukwuemeka Ojukwu, to secede from Nigeria, to carve out a republic from Nigeria, to establish the nation of Biafra as a separate political entity, from the rest of Nigeria. So that threat was not taken that kindly, So the then military head of state that replaced Agui called General, then Colonel Yakubu Gowon, warned Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu not to go ahead with the establishment of the Republic of Biafra, as he threatened to do, not to go ahead with the creation, with the secession of his people, and that continued until finally, I think in the year of 1967, in the month of May, I think so, 30th, Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, in collaboration with the leadership of the government of Eastern Region, pronounced the Republic of Biafra as a different and separate political entity, from Nigeria. And a war finally ensued. The fighting began, So when the fighting properly, began proper, when the feud, the clash became established, and Nigeria was ready to fight Biafra, Gowon was ready to slug it out with Ojukwu, Ikwerre people became inexorably and inevitably involved in the conflict. They became part of it. There was no way to excuse themselves. There was no way to avert or avoid being part of it. So they became inexorably hooked in the war. And of course, as a group of people that speak the Igbo group of language, the central language of those who speak the Igbo language, they decided to support, the Eastern region, the rest of the groups in Eastern region, to fight Nigeria. Of course, before that time, they had been tagged as one of the minorities in the East. But you see, there were sentiments around it You know, most of the mothers in Ikwerre area come from Igbo land. So those women employ their children, leave them with their children here to assist their people fight Nigeria, because the war majorly affected them over there. You know, so Ikwerre people became part of it. But I hear people say that Ikwerre people sabotaged, that they betrayed, you know, the Biafran government, the Eastern region during the time of that hostility. Some people say that, how can it be? You know, it is quite surprising to hear. How can it be that Ikwerre people that expended so much resources and lives to help the rest of Eastern region execute that war, now betrayed and sabotaged Biafra? How can it be? You know, Ikwerre people suffered the brunt of rebellion. You know, when the 10th Marine Commando, as led by the late iconic Benjamin Adekunle, known as the Black Scorpion, you know, landed in Bonny, there was a strong shootout. The Biafran forces put up a strong resistance, you know, to make them not to land in Bonny. But you know, it was not enough. The Nigerian forces, the Nigerian soldiers, military, overwhelmed the Biafran forces and they fled. As the Nigerian soldiers were advancing from that area into the heart of Ikwerre land, almost the whole of Ogbulu town was demolished. They entered into Okrika. You know, almost the whole of Okrika was demolished, and now they entered proper into Ikwerre, into Port Harcourt, and the shellings began. There were heavy shellings in Port Harcourt city because the soldiers had already tagged every Ikwerre person, even people around there, whether Okrika or Groni, all the people around, you know, in Eastern region, you know, as Igbo people, as rebels, as renegades. So they decided to pounce on them. Most of the soldiers that made up the Nigerian military, like the outside the Fulanis, the middle belt people, you know, at the time were not conversant and familiar with the terrains of this area, and they did not know where the boundaries of the Igbo ended. So now they summed up everybody within this, you know, geography as Igbo people. So the shelling started, you know, very, very heavy. The people who own the land, the ABC people, Ikwerre people, deserted their original homes. Ikwerre people, especially their children, died in their thousands. Malnutrition, hunger and starvation killed so many Ikwerre people. Almost every able-bodied youth, whether that person is of age or not, was conscripted into the Biafran military to go and fight. Ikwerre women were raped by the forces of Biafra and Nigeria. So many of them were impregnated, and that was why at the end of the war, when they were coming back from, you know, where they ran to, so many of them came with big bellies, and today they have deposited people that do not know their fathers. Their fathers are from, you know, from the north or from Igbo proper, and their behaviors will show that. I know so many of them, we know them, that people cannot explain, you know, who their fathers where. That was the situation. You know, our domestic animals, Ikwerre's domestic animals and fools were walloped by the hungry forces of Biafra and Nigeria. Houses were destroyed and burnt. Important photographs of Ikwerre chiefs were carted away. You know, their belongings, house property or properties were destroyed and carried away, stolen, you know, by thieves. So they now moved to places they were not acquainted with, and they suffered. They suffered. Many of them were used as cowboys, you know, to go and be on the lookout, you know, for where the Nigerian soldiers will come from. So many Ikwerre people, Ogonis, you know, Ejo, and so many Efik, Ibibios were used to go and search where the Nigerian soldiers hid, and many of them lost their lives. Many of them died in doing that. But people say Ikwerre people betrayed, Ikwerre people, you know, sabotaged. When the war took place, there was no Ikwerre person, you know, at the top level in Biafran government, you know, in the leadership of the government of Biafra, or even in Nigeria, to dictate the tune of the war, to take decisions concerning the war, whether from the side of the central government, the federal government, or that of the regional government, the eastern government. There was no Ikwerre person. There was no Ikwerre person as one of the ringleaders, one of the plotters of the 1966 coup. But they suffered for a pain that they did not cause. It was a matter between Ojukwu and Gowon, a matter between the government of Eastern Region and the federal government. You know, so Ikwerre people, you know, became part of it and suffered. People say Ikwerre people betrayed. How? How? My own father fought in the war. His younger brother, Uncle Chikwe Tasie, was part of the Biafran army. My grandmother ran away. So many people, almost everywhere in Ikwerre was deserted. There was nobody around. People moved out. As my father used to sing it, kwara kwara kwapu kwapu, onye ọbụla kwapu kwapu n'ụra. Kwara kwara kwapu kwapu kwapu, onye ọbụla kwapu kwapu n'ụra. You know, it means everybody must have to pack out. Everybody must have to move out. That was when the shelling began in earnest and began very, very heavy. People were forced to desert their homes and run away. You know, Ikwerre people actively became involved and participated in that conflict. A person like the late Chief Samuel Obodoho Amadi, popularly known as Manila in Ishobo, had a car sales, you know, place, you know, in Agri, road in Port Harcourt, in the late periods of the 1960s, say 1969. He donated some of his big buses to carry soldiers of the Biafran army, you know, around. He donated his own buses. He belonged to the high-ranking, you know, personalities in Eastern Region, though not one of the administrators. at the time, but he was a friend to some of the big people in Eastern region, and he was finally made the head of militia in Port Harcourt province. Chief Eso Amadi became the head of militia group, the Biafra militia group. He was even part of the recruitment, of soldiers or fighters into that militia. So he offered his own assistance to Biafra. A person like John Owochukwu, from Ishobo community, was the head of Biafran, Constituent Assembly in Port Harcourt province. Many people, assisted in providing foods or food of any type to the Biafran soldiers fighting, in the war. See, many of our women, many of Ikwerre women, were taken as wives by the forces of Nigeria and Biafra, and yet people say Ikwerre did not make substantial contributions to the execution of that war. History is no more taught in school. Some of those who were born after the war cannot know the contributions or the various component groups that made up the Eastern region at the time. How can they know? Many of them don't even know how the war, happened. What caused the war to take place? They don't know. So how can they know the contributions of the various ethnic groups in the different Eastern region, in executing that war? How can they know? They are the people who say that the Ikwerre people betrayed, during that war. Of course, people like the late King Jackson Mpe of Ishobo, the late Chief John Amadebe Silim of Ishobo, the late Chief Emmanuel Agoma of Ogunabale, here in Medicine, and their counterpart in the chain, the late Honorable J.H.E. Wuke of Okomoko, were influential members in Ikwerre here and the chain at the time that helped to canvass for soldiers for Biafra. The late Odumegu Chukwuemeka Ojukwu came to Ishobo about 2 times, to look for soldiers, and the late King Mpe Anuchi, Jackson Mpe took him to Ruta land, to Ishobo land and to other places to scout for soldiers to assist Biafra fight Nigeria. And they say Ikwerre did not make, great contributions in that war. Instead, that they sabotaged and betrayed. The real people that betrayed Biafra, that made Biafra to fall, to be defeated, were majorly people from the Igbo ethnic group proper. Those people who were giving money to go and buy airplanes abroad and came back with ill-fated airplanes, and some ran away with the money given to them, were the real saboteurs and betrayers of Biafra. Those military officers who were eating fat and large at their military camps, while their subjects, the people they were leading, were starving to death, were the saboteurs and betrayers in Biafra. Those propagandists like Esika Popabi, who align themselves to Gowon And we are tracing the whereabouts of Ojukwu and his people. We are the betrayers, we are the saboteurs in Biafra. Those military officers, led by the late Major Ifajuna, who wanted to overthrow Ojukwu when the war was at its heat. We are the saboteurs, we are the betrayers of Biafra. Those people, politicians and military officers who knew quite well that Biafra was not going to overwhelm Nigeria in that conflict, who knew quite well that they were not going to become victorious in that hostility, were the real saboteurs and betrayers of Biafra. Those political warlords, for political reasons and economic reasons, did not want to end the war, even when their people were suffering in mass. When their people were suffering in mass, and they continued to advance the war, advance the cause of the war for their own selfish reasons, were the saboteurs and betrayers in that war. Of course, I have never read in any history book. I have never read in any history book. I have never heard from any academically inclined Igbo person, mentioning and indicting any Ikwerre person as one of the saboteurs, one of the betrayers in Biafra. I have never heard, I have never read, If you look at the accounts of the late literary icon, Professor Chinua Achebe, in his book, There Was a Country. If you look at the accounts of the late Alexander Madebo in his book, Biafra Revolution and Biafra Civil War. If you look at the accounts of Major or General Esama, Aladi in his book, that of Ademole Ademoyega in Why We Struck, in Emeka Ani, in Africa Biafra Died, and so many other books written immediately after the war. I have never read from those chronicles, mentioning and indicting any Ikwerre person as one of the saboteurs, one of the betrayers in Biafra. I have never. And I want to bet that there is none from this extraction called Ikwerre that played any role in betraying and sabotaging Biafra. Instead, they spent so much energy, resources, in helping to execute that war. That is the history. That is the history. That is how people go on, carrying and peddling rumors that Ikwerre people, because of one grouse or the other, because of one sentiment or the other, somebody can say whatever he or she likes. But this is the true story as it happened. Go and check in any history book those who participated in that government of Eastern Region, in that republic called Biafra, whether any Ikwerre person, was among the coup plotters, was at the helm of affairs, one of the managers, in Eastern Region, and also played any role in sabotaging, and betraying the efforts of Biafra during the war between Nigeria and Biafra in the month of May 30th in the year of 1967. And of course, after the war, so many of them came back haggard, they came back as destitutes, they came back, worn out, many of them did not come back alive. my father, his younger brother, and their mother came back alive. But many were not fortunate to come back alive. Many died in the war. Many Ikwerre people died in the war. So many of them did not come back alive. So when they came back alive, nobody even helped them, to begin to rebuild the environment. When Gowon initiated the 3 arrows, reconstruction, reconciliation, and rehabilitation, it did not reach Ikwerre land. They concentrated, in Igbo land proper. It did not come here. So people started from scratch again to rebuild their environment. So no Ikwerre person, sabotaged and betrayed Biafra during that conflict.